DMMC or something like that, that was found in the supplement JAK3D.
Oh, wow.
So we figured that out just in our own little Fort Bliss Community Health Council. So in that regard, we asked, and this was on an HBO sketch. I don't know if you ever saw it. There was an HBO special with Soledad O'Brien in 2015. Interviewed me about this, but it was just in 2011. Just a quiet, sleepy post in West Texas. We asked GNC on post, and there were I think there were 5 of them on total Fort Bliss, 5 stores, and we asked them, "Would you take it off their shelves?" And they agreed to. No big deal. Until it got to their corporate headquarters later, and their corporate headquarters said, "Absolutely no, put it back on the shelf." I said, "No, you don't understand. We really think it contributed to death." "Well, we don't agree with that. So who are you?" And it was at that point, it was like, okay, we're going to declare war on this one for our soldiers. So, and again, some of this is at personal cost. JAK3D is made by USP Labs, which is in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Powerful Congresswoman, Kay Granger, to this day, I think hates me, and made it clear. So a lot of political pressure, as we said, no, this is an issue. I had the Surgeon General of the Army, who was a 3-star general, whose brother was a former Chief of Staff of the Army, last name Schumacher, called me and said, "Hey, you need to get your nose out of this. You don't know what you're doing." I said, "Well, this is contributing to some of our soldiers' deaths, sir." And he said, "Well, you just need to stop." And I finally said, "I'm sorry, you're not my chain of command, but thank you very much." Again, that's tough between a 2-star and a 3-star general, but we kept going at it. We had the data. William Beaumont Hospital helped us with the data. So finally, we found some allies with the U.S. Health Institute, which a classmate of mine from West Point happened to be a colonel there. So we joined forces, and we really led from Fort Bliss a national campaign to get that ingredient taken out and take that that supplement off the shelves. Well, it started bubbling up, and as we got more information out there, then the Navy and the Marine Corps said, we've had some of these, and it just started popping up. As we did more research, we learned that Australia had outlawed it, Canada had outlawed it. It got up to the Secretary of the Army, who was nervous. And so it got to the Secretary of Defense, who said, "Okay, I want a 90-day stay on it, and then we'll do some research." And all sorts of stuff started happening at that point. Kay Granger went on the House floor during Armed Services Committee meeting, and she told Chief of Staff of the Army, "You got a bad leader down there at Fort Bliss." And that didn't help much because General Darren didn't care for me anyway. So that just reinforced it. But anyway, we were not going to be deterred based on our own little research. Well, it ended up, and we started this in 2011. So by 2013, 2 months before my change of command, it got to the FDA. The Federal Drug Administration outlawed it for all of America. And it started with Little Fort Bliss with our preventable soldier campaign. I know there were people who were glad when I left Fort Bliss throughout the Army and the health community, because that was the second thing. The third thing was from our community health, we had a soldier who died in custody in El Paso jail. That could have been a huge brouhaha. But again, I knew the chief of police. He called me immediately. We wanted to look at the facts. Well, what it turned out is he had kind of been drinking, and they were trying to calm him down. He was excited. And then he died. He died in El Paso County Jail. Well, it turns out that he had sickle cell trace and didn't know it. And when you get excited to a certain level at certain altitudes, it can cause a reaction. and sometimes it can cause a reaction that can cause your death. Well, it's starting, okay, it's like, okay, let's look into that. We found out that if you're Caucasian, you have 1 out of every 600 Caucasian soldiers had sickle cell trace. 1 out of 200 Latino soldiers had sickle cell trace. 1 out of 14 African American soldiers, sickle cell trace. And of course, the Commander William Beaumont, who was already getting pressure from the Surgeon General Army, said, I can't participate. We can't make this mandatory. I said, okay, well, we'll make it voluntary. Well, and every soldier wanted to do it. They wanted to know, because the Army was really the Army senior leadership was kind of against that, because, well, what does that mean for a place like Afghanistan? Well, it means that we got to do a better job of screening. It means that when you go to higher altitudes, you have sickle cell trace, that can be a contributing factor. But while I was there, we started the voluntary testing, and people learned a lot about themselves. But the whole idea behind all of this was to make people more resilient through the comprehensive soldier fitness, but really understanding their own selves, physically, mentally, and everything, so that any kind of care for them, through William Beaumont or healthcare, is based on knowledge and it's personal care. When you know all that, you have a better feel for your stress level and your own resiliency. So that was behind all that. But there were 32 different initiatives that went into reducing the suicide rate. And I went over that with my successor at Fort Bliss, General Sean McFarland, who I really like. We've known each other since we were 18 years old. His wife is from El Paso, went to rival high schools. And I really explained how everything was interconnected. But for whatever reason, when I left, some things were taken out. And when you take something out like that, it takes off the whole balance.
Yeah.
Even understanding why I opened the post to the public, which that was controversial. Folks said, oh, you're going to let them in. I said, them? Those people. I said, oh, you mean the American people who we serve? Yeah, they kind of need to see their insulation. Now, I was tainted or colored by the fact that I was from El Paso. And when I was a kid, you could go through Fort Bliss. It wasn't a big deal. But I understood the legitimate concerns after 9/11. But once we built Freedom
Crossing.
Freedom Crossing, thank you. We wanted to turn that into the place to be. And for a while there, on Thursday and Fridays, it kind of was when we had the Irish pub. You had a 10-screen movie theater showing first-run movies at Buffalo Wild Wings. You go in there. You go there on Thursday or Friday. It was packed.
Mm-hmm.
It was packed because people from El Paso would come. So our young soldiers, male and female, could meet all sorts of people. It was it was a place to be initially before you figured out what you want to do next and go to clubs.
Right.
But people would go there, especially I think Thursday night was a high night. Friday people would come maybe to link up. I don't like to say hook up, but link up, and then go to other places. So it was wonderful. But again, people said the crime rate's going to go up, and they're right. The crime rate did change when we opened it up. Believe it or not, it got lower. It got lower because people were just more observant. People of El Paso, were kind of warned, whatever. Hey, this is your post, so they took care of it.
Right.
So it was kind of neat. So it all kind of worked together. I'm not trying to make it all seem like it was just gravy, but it was neat to see how it was turning out. It wasn't going to be satisfied until we had 0 preventable deaths from whatever.
That's amazing, sir. I not a lot of people knew what you did behind the scenes to make Fort Bliss what it was. So I appreciate that you as a leader did all that, because we don't know unless you attend the meetings or you're there. People just don't know what happens. And Freedom Crossing is legendary forever because that place is phenomenal. And I know just from talking to other soldiers, you almost don't ever have to leave post. There was even a Dollar Tree. So.
Yes, that was planned. We had plans for so many more things too. The Texas Roadhouse was a big deal. that opened up right before my change of command. I just said, "You got to open it up." Even having concerts when at Ludacris was supposed to come. Well, it turned out that for whatever reason, after my change of command, he was supposed to come within 10 days. It got canceled.
Oh.
So yeah, whatever.
I mean, that place is amazing. There's so many different things. You don't ever have to leave post because you have it all there. So it was phenomenal.
But it's just thinking differently about things. And
Right.
that's what you do with all sorts of problems. I think problems can be solved, and I love that. The problem here in my corporation is we had 7 years of declining revenue for defense. So, you create a team, you create a vision. Now we have 5 straight years of growth. You have a vision, and we can do the same thing as a nation when it comes to ending systemic racism.
Yeah.
And that's what I hope to do. We can also do the same thing for suicide. Suicide is in fact preventable. And there's some organizations that say, don't say that. It's not preventable because people can't help themselves. It's like, it's preventable. It is. And that's why I belong to the Matthew Silverman Memorial Foundation to prevent youth suicides. I'm a board member. It's based out of California because I just believe in it.
That's amazing. And I think that, well, one of the things that I really love that you did is you became vulnerable later on in this article. You spoke about your own struggle, and I don't see people doing that. I know I never really talked about it while I was serving because I just didn't. It was a stigma that got into my head, and I was afraid. Although I did seek counseling after you made all those changes, it was open to us, so I was able to go seek therapy, but there was still that stigma that just made it kind of scary as a senior leader. So it wasn't until after I retired that I became more open about it. But this article also helped me see things in your view and made me appreciate it more. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about what I do now. But can you tell us a little bit about when you decided to talk about your own struggles that you had?
Yeah, I think it was after we had what was it? Christmas of 2011.
Mm-hmm.
We had a soldier from Aviation Brigade who went home and was having problems and decided to take his own life. And so he hung himself the family Christmas tree, knowing that his 2 little daughters the next morning would wake up and they're the ones who found him. I never understood that. I went to his memorial service and I saw those 2 little girls, crying next to his big photo they had of him up front. And it just touched me, and left there within an hour of that memorial service. My PAO public affairs officer says, hey sir, it's time to write your blog. So I'll write my blog. I just went off. It was in fact, it was terrible. I called him a coward. I said that suicide's a cowardice act. And I had the forthright to take that out. But I left in there that it was selfish. And I said it was selfish because, his family who's left to live on, now has that to live with. Christmas will never be the same for those girls. So I just went on about, help your buddy out by not having them have to clean up your mess. But it really came across as wrong. And it's regrettable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always said I regret it. I guess I never apologized for it. I just said it's regrettable because I was so into suicide prevention. Any suicide affected me personally, as well as, all the leaders there at Fort Bliss. So got a lot of heat on that and that blog was in January, but it wasn't until, there's a lady out of Las Cruces who was giving dogs away to soldiers. They weren't well-trained dogs, and then they were crapping in places like in urinating at Freedom Crossing. I said, wait a minute, there are rules for service dogs.